Here, a firm believer that simplicity scales and complexity fails. So what can we do to really look at and simplify things in the business? And the great thing about business these days is that we're running on software that captures lots and lots of data. So oftentimes the information is already there. We just don't know how to use it, or it's just not been utilized to its full potential.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Layne Booth with us. With strategic planning in combination with visual dashboards, business owners can reclaim their time to refocus on their business, make data-driven decisions, and increase their income. Here to explain the ins and outs of dashboards is Layne Booth. Layne is the CEO and dashboard expert of the Project Booth, a business growth agency that uses proven metrics and data to help businesses grow faster and with more clarity. Layne, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in today.
Yeah, so first of all, how did you end up getting so focused on dashboards? That seems like a pretty interesting specialization that has a story with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I was an engineer by trade, and so my first decade in the corporate space was all about working at a big manufacturing company. So we had over 300 machines that were busy running every single day, and data in that volume and capacity was very, very important. So to know when machines went down, when pieces were breaking, how efficient were our team members that were working on the floor. We had data coming out our ears every single day to make the product better, less expensive, higher quality. And so that really was my trial by fire in learning how important numbers are to keep a business running smoothly and more profitably. And so after spending time there, I started to raise my family. And then noticed that, hey, you know what? Small businesses need support like this as well. If they want to get to be bigger businesses along the way, they're going to need some of this core infrastructure as well. So by starting to talk to the small business world, I found that, hey, you don't have to look at 40,000 rows of data like I might have done in my manufacturing days. But hey, how can we condense things to maybe 15 to 20 key metrics so that business owners were very clear on what were the few things they actually needed to do to start growing and scaling their business with a lot more confidence.
Right. So where does identifying those metrics fit in versus having some sort of dashboard system, visual, display that they can refer back to? Because there are tools like Looker Studio, formerly known as Google Data Studio, which has a bunch of templates out there. People have made their templates available for free and for not too expensive. But then it seems like the most important thing is actually to identify those metrics.
Absolutely. Yes. So, Stephan, your business is going to be entirely different from my business. And even if there's other, maybe SEO companies out there or agencies, one is still going to be very different from the other. There's different values, there's different team members associated. So what we found is that over time, having a dashboard that is really customized to you, your team, how you think, what's your greater vision long term, actually helps simplify what needs to be on the dashboard in the first place. And oftentimes it's not necessarily the tech that trips people up. Yes, you could put this in Looker Studio, you could put it in Grow, you could put it in Sife. There's a lot. And let me just say, there are endless more dashboard software companies coming to market, day by day as well. But at the end of the day, most challenges are happening on the front end of, well, what should I even put on a dashboard in the first place? And so that's why we've actually developed a three-part framework to identify what needs to go on the dashboard, because the tech can be solved in a couple of different ways. At the end of the day, I'm tech agnostic. We do have our favorites, but the what that goes on tends to be the area that most people struggle with.
Yeah. So let's go through your framework.
Awesome. Yes. So we like to keep things simple around here. We're a firm believer that simplicity scales and complexity fails. So what can we do to really look at and simplify things in the business? And the great thing about business these days is that we are running on software that captures lots and lots of data. So oftentimes the information is already there. We just don't know how to use it, or it's just not been utilized to its full potential. So we have developed an ABC framework. So we call it the ABCs of KPIs. So when you have these three pieces in place, that's what really leans towards simplifying so you can make those more data-driven decisions. So step one, part one, is all about analyzing and auditing. What's so great is that, here we are in January, and there's a lot of reflection oftentimes happening at what happened last year. And I was speaking to another group mastermind just the other day where there was this thought that, oh, I've got to start analyzing all the new stuff. When really you already have in your arsenal, you have a full 12 months of history most times that you can already lean back on and see, well, what's already working or what's already not working that I can just amplify right now. I don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. Oftentimes you can just look at, well, if I were to truly analyze what was happening on my social media, if I were to truly analyze what's happening on my website, or what's happening in my CRM, what's happening in my delivery systems, there's plenty of data to go ahead and find like what's truly moving your business forward in this 80-20 capacity, right? The Pareto effect. 20% of what you did last year, 20% drove 80% of your revenue, drove 80% of your sales. Now that does vary a percentage point or two over time, but by and large, that remains true across the industry and across different types of businesses as well. So
yeah. Oh, a fun fact about the 80-20 rule. I learned this from Perry Marshall. I interviewed him on the show a while back. He said that the 80-20 rule is actually fractal, meaning there's an 80-20 of the 80-20. And there's an 80-20 of the 80-20 of the 80-20. So doing the math, it's like 5% would generate 56% of the value. And there's even another layer and another layer after that. So you can really hone in on that very small percentage that drives an extraordinarily large, and by comparison, value to your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was do you tend to find similar things when you're looking at the SEO side of businesses as well? Like 20% of the effort is coming from, or 20 is driving 80% of the results that you're seeing.
Well, certainly there are the biggest needle movers that I think are underrepresented in an SEO project, but I don't know if it equals out the 80-20 rule or if it's more like a 90-10 rule or what. But yeah, I certainly do focus on the big needle movers. I learned from one of Tony Robbins' seminars that there's being outcome focused and there's being activity focused. So I tend to be outcome focused rather than ticking off all the boxes of all the minor activities that are part of an SEO project typically, but not really going to do much for the business and its bottom line.
I find that so fascinating that, even and every year as your business grows, this concept, whether it's 80-20, 90-10, still comes right back around. So everything that you maybe deleted from what you were going to do this year, you've made space to try new things, or you found another layer of 80-20 that you can go back and refine. So it is, to your point, there's layers and layers that can continue to support that. So with that being said, it really comes back to like just analyzing, looking back on what has truly happened in the past so that you can use that past to have a better predictor model of your future.
Mm-hmm.
So part A is all about the analyze. Moving into the next piece of our ABCs, the next piece we find is that when you aren't looking at this next step effectively, you can still end up looking at all the things like, wow, I just audited or analyzed all this data. I must need to put all of it on a dashboard. I must assign every bit of it to a team member. Let's clog their time with all these check boxes to do. And instead, when you focus on B, the bottom line, does this hit your revenue goals? Does this hit your profitability goals? Does this help you achieve those non-negotiables for your business or perhaps for your personal life? What is the bottom line concept? Is this number going to help you see, hey, I'm driving towards the right things? As I mentioned earlier, you could look at lots of things in your business, but not everything is going to drive the needle. Not everything is going to be tied to your bottom line. So that is one of the key ways it actually reduces and removes anything you might have thought was important to go on the dashboard in the first place. So, and then as we move through the last piece, when you have C, clarity and confidence as a CEO in the business. If the data isn't improving clarity, then it's not helpful. And so this is permission right now. If you've been getting a spreadsheet from a team member for weeks on end and you have this number on there and it's just not helping you make any decisions, please consider removing it. So again, coming back to the process of simplicity scales, complexity fails. So how can you continue to ensure that what's in front of you is helping you make decisions, data-driven decisions tied to your overarching goals?
So what would be an example of a metric that is just informational versus one that is more action-oriented, let's say for marketing?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one that actually I can share with you that has two sides of the coin. So let's talk social media, something that a lot of people are using these days, creating content, creating connections, looking to increase engagement and overall, hopefully leading to sales. So if I talk to perhaps a newer entrepreneur or maybe someone that's heavily referral based, comments on a LinkedIn article or post may not be in their 80-20. It may not be something that's really going to drive sales. However, at the same time, if I'm talking to an influencer whose sole purpose is to drive traffic to their website, that's how they make money, then hey, now we can see that engagement on that post directly leads to more lands on your blog post, which in turn generates more revenue. So we can tie back directly to, hey, there's a value per comment or per engagement on this post over time. So sometimes it can be identified in a directly, like this particular post drove a certain amount of dollar revenue. And sometimes you can look at that overarching as well. So, hey, over the last 90 days, when we get this type of engagement, we see this type of revenue come through as well. So that, I feel like, is a really good example of how it could be important for one business, but maybe not so important for another.
Yeah. That reminds me of a past client we had that had a lot of negative commentary in their YouTube channel, on Yelp, on various other platforms, and a lot of that was unaddressed. Most of it was. So they didn't have a dedicated community manager going in and addressing the customer complaints. So a metric that would be only informational, not valuable, would be just the number of comments posted in the last week or month on YouTube to their videos. A more action-oriented one would be unaddressed customer complaints posted to their YouTube videos in the last week or month.
Yeah. So it's a great example. It really does. It ties back to, what is generating the revenue and sales for the business, what is generating, for those, that may be more, philanthropic or, nonprofits and things like that. Is it still leading to your overarching goals for the year? And that cuts through so much of the clutter that could otherwise show up.
So what would be an example of a metric or two for a nonprofit?
So metrics for nonprofits, we've had this interesting conversation with folks. So You think nonprofits like, oh, they're not interested in money. That's not the case at all. They're very interested in donors. They're very interested in getting donations coming through. So when they are hosting events, like what do registrations or signups look like? They're also looking at how many typically have team members that are constantly looking and researching who might be good partners for increasing donations. So those are the partnerships, the number of outreaches. So that's a really good leading indicator. It's one thing that might be good to clarify as well, Stephan, is one of the pieces that trips people up sometimes is they get stuck on the dollars. And dollars are great. Like we want those things coming through for businesses and even nonprofits. But that's something that tends to happen at the end. That's something that happens after your team has done all the work. It's something that after you've spent all the money on marketing and other pieces. So it's considered a lagging indicator, something that happens after the effort has been exerted. And instead, what we find for those that are really scaling and growing their businesses, the more they can lean into the leading indicators. So how many outreaches did Susan do last week? Or how many calls got booked? Or how many registrations did we have for that event? Those early leading indicators are not only better, but they happen more frequently so that you can track them more easily. And it's something that your team often feels like they actually have some control over. Because if I go to Susan and say, hey, your job is to increase revenue by $100,000 this month, she's like, all right, I hope I can do that. Like, let me know how I can help. But if you say, hey, no, I need 100 people registering for this webinar that we're doing every single Friday for the month, that feels a lot more specific and attainable to her role. Then that's what really ignites the team to take charge and start being a key leader for business growth as well.
Yeah. And there are different levels of leading and lagging indicators. So something in SEO that would be way towards the tail end of lagging would be SEO generated revenue. Something that would be a little more leading, but still a lagging indicator would be the number of keywords that the client, the website is ranking for. But a leading indicator would be something that would indicate that they are heading in a positive direction that will eventually lead to the increased rankings and to the revenue. So if you could give an example in, let's say, an agency business of leading and lagging indicators, because you have clients and you do projects for them, so you have an agency, right? So this would be something that you have intimate familiarity with.
And give a great example. We run live events and trainings oftentimes as our marketing of choice to onboard clients. So one of the things that we do when we're running these events, we will have free trainings that are coming in. So we are inviting people to register. Hopefully, then they attend, and then they book sales calls with us and become clients. So that's kind of our 4-part, mini funnel that's happening to acquire clients. So a lagging indicator would be number of clients. All right. So that's what's going to happen at the end of this campaign. But on the flip side, there's actually a couple, to your point, leading indicators. A leading indicator could be how many calls our team gets booked. A leading indicator could also be what does our attendance look like, percentage and quantity. Another leading indicator, even before that, would be how many people are registering. A leading indicator before that would be how many people are opening the emails, how many people are landing on the landing page. So one of the things that, if you're wondering what is a leading or lagging indicator, if you think about like, what's the end result do you want? Like, do you want another, clients every week? Do you want another 10 clients, every week, or 100 by the end of the month? If you think about like what is that end goal that you want, well, what has to happen like right before they become a client? Well, they have a conversation with us. How do they have a conversation? Well, first they get a proposal. And then how do they get the proposal? Well, first they opt in for the lead magnet. So if you kind of reverse engineer, like get really granular with every single step that happens before, until basically you're at the beginning where like they've never heard of you and they found out about you somewhere somehow. So that's kind of, one of the earliest indicators you can get to. So that you have several metrics that you can look at, because Stephan, I'm not sure if you've seen the same thing on the SEO agency side of things, but oftentimes the whole business isn't broke. There's enough traction, there's enough systems in place to where you don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. You can actually find the slice that's underperforming. So, wow, we have really great conversions, but no one's opening up emails afterwards. I wonder if something's wrong with, or are we getting marked as spam, or what's happening to where no one's opening up the reminder emails. Or maybe you have great attendance at your webinar or training, but then no one's booking calls. Okay, am I teaching too much? Like, what's that gap that I need to change? So I don't need to create a whole new campaign. I just need to fix what I'm talking about in the training that makes it more encouraging for people to book calls at the end of it.
Yeah, so an SEO example of that would be, a leading indicator. If I notice that the client hasn't posted to their blog or article area for 3 years, that could be a leading indicator. Is all right. We're going to track how many SEO focused blog posts are published or at least drafted each time period, and then tracking the keywords and the number of sales or leads coming in from SEO as the lagging indicators that connect up with the leading indicator.
Yeah, it's so powerful, I feel like, because when at the beginning of the year, yes, you want to set these big, hairy, audacious goals, right? But in the week, if all you're thinking about is that big number that you're trying to hit, it can kind of become overwhelming because it feels like there's so many things that you could be doing. But when you're able to reverse engineer and really backtrack into what are those early indicators, it becomes very clear that, oh, well, if I just focused on registrations, or if I just focused on writing one blog post this week, that is the critical launch point for me getting to my end result by December 31st. Then again, we're adding simplicity, we're bringing clarity to what it's going to take to actually achieve your goals.
Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. So now, let's get a couple of more examples in for our listener who might be a different kind of a business than an agency. So, or maybe they're not even doing SEO right now. And then we'll move on to some of the more techie stuff like the platforms and templates and all that sort of stuff to help get them going with it. So what would a podcaster or a coach might want to track as leading and lagging indicators in their dashboard?
Yes. So of the podcasters that we've worked with in the past, again, being really clear on what your funnel is, but for this particular client that we had worked with, downloads are kind of one of the only direct, indicators you can get from the platforms themselves oftentimes. So, some people are going to listen to it streaming and other places, but downloads is a really good indicator as to the popularity of how frequently your guests are tuning in each week. And then one of the other key things that I feel like most podcasters do, but I would love to call it out, is having one link that your podcast listeners go to. So it may be your website / podcast, but having a landing spot where you can see basically like, hey, that's podcast traffic. So probably helpful on the SEO side of things as well. But being able to see where those people are coming from, and then you can update that page with, well, whatever the latest tools or tips or templates or things like that that you've had over time, or the replays and stuff, becomes really helpful to track what your podcast listeners are doing. Versus, hey, you might have talked about like, oh, well, go follow me on Instagram, and I'll also go do this, and also go do that. No, the more you can just lead them to one spot, the better tracking you'll have to be able to see that through.
Yeah, and the better compliance you'll have on in terms of their uh, doing the thing that you're asking them for. If you give them 3 or 4 different calls to action, that's overwhelming, and you're overloading their system. Whereas you give them one, like I hear so many of these YouTube video producers or the YouTubers say, like me or like this video, subscribe, ring the notification bell, da 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 da, like watch the
Yeah.
video.
How many different clicks do I have to do right
Yeah, like
now?
wait a second, let me pause the video and make a list. Like nobody's going to do that. That's overwhelming.
Yes, absolutely. And so one other thing too, especially if you're using a podcast, I'll say like as a coach, like this person was doing, also ensuring that there's even creating a link if you are onboarding clients from a sales call, then can you have a sales call specifically that only your podcaster listeners really get to as well? So that's one way that we've been able to reduce the noise so that we can see what those listeners are doing. And yes, sometimes people will come through the cracks, but you'll be amazed at how much clarity you have for what's happening with your podcasts when you have a super tight funnel like that.
Yeah, and with, let's say, a particular metric such as downloads, really trying to connect the dots as far as how does this drive engagement, business value, etc. Like, for example, tracking overall downloads per time period, whether that's week or month, is something that most podcasters would do or have access to. It's part of tools like Libsyn and so forth, their whatever hosting platform they're using. And if they look at the highest performing episodes in terms of downloads, that'll give them indicators that they're able to maybe take more action on, instead of just knowing that, oh, July was a really good month for us, I wonder why. How about looking at what out of the last 52 interviews really stood out, and then trying to reverse engineer what made that particular episode so compelling. Was there a behavior that the guest had that was unusual, like promoting the episode to their email list, and it was a separate email, not just a mention in their newsletter? Maybe they had a very compelling case study or offer or maybe they're just really famous and get Googled and YouTube searched on a lot. That sort of stuff is way more actionable.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great point there, Stephan. Like the podcasters that we've seen as well, Libsyn, oftentimes we find the most common view is just to look at like the list of your past, podcast episodes, and it'll tell you, some information. But when you can actually flip that and look at it graphically, so that, wow, I can see, week after week, the increase in downloads or decrease in downloads, or I can summarize them so that, wow, yes, July was great, but why was August so bad? Oh yeah, I only posted 1 instead of 4 that month. All right, well, that's a fairly clear example of how impactful your weekly, consistency is impacting how many downloads that you're receiving. Another interesting thing too might be just the type. So sometimes podcasters might do like live coaching calls. And so those might get more traction than just a teaching style episode. Or sometimes, everyone loves to have their, recap or their replays. Hey, we're bringing back the best of, 2022 or those sort of things. Oftentimes the repurposed content, you'll see a dramatic dip in that because people are just always craving the new and the fresh. So not to say that that's not for every single podcaster out there, but for the ones that we've worked with, we tend to see that drop when it's repurposed content instead of fresh and new.
Yep, makes sense. So somebody who isn't necessarily podcasting, but they're a coach, so they do strategy sessions, free first session type sales calls and so forth. What are some metrics for them?
Yes. So I love making sure you're very clear on your sales pipeline at that point in time. So if you know that, hey, having calls with people is basically that's one step before they become a client. Well, what are some ways that have worked really well for you in the past to get more calls booked? Was it when you did a podcast with a particular, colleague? Was it when um, maybe did a facilitated training inside of someone else's mastermind? Oftentimes those warm connections are what easily generates more sales calls booked. And at the same time, if you're also playing with more social media or organic or Facebook ads, getting really clear on what count of clients have actually come from those initial points. Did it come from the warm connections? Did it come from social media? Did it come from Facebook ads? Because oftentimes what I see in the coaching space, let me know if you see this too, Stephan, is we end up just like adding on. It's like, oh, that worked for somebody. Let me add that onto my business. Oh, that worked for somebody. Let me add that onto my business. And we end up with like this big bowl of spaghetti and not really sure what's making the money. So really taking the time to come back and say, all right, where's the money coming in right now? So I've got these sales calls. And it can be as simple as adding a "How did you hear about me?" checkbox on the sales call booking itself, so they can know if you came from a podcast or heard me speak somewhere or saw me on a Facebook ad, so that you can really get a sense and idea of where these people are coming from.
Yep. That reminds me of an episode recently. I interviewed Tom Kelly, who had coached me for a while. And one of the things that he had me do, which was brilliant, was a marketing weapons tracking spreadsheet. This was years ago. And it was really valuable to see where these clients came from and how much revenue was associated with each client and where it originated from. It seems so simple, but when you see that in a summary form, like, okay, these are the conferences and seminars and masterminds that actually generated 6 or 7 figures for me, and these are ones that I feel good about and I enjoy, but have generated nothing. That's pretty telling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And until you actually look at it from a data perspective, you can feel warm and cozy with your intuition of like, oh, well, I think people might have gone there, or maybe I planted the seed, and maybe in a year or two from now, people will become clients. That while that may be true, you also have right in front of you, if you just went to more conferences like this, or maybe went to the conference and the VIP session, that could be an immediate boost to revenue versus a long endeavor to see clients come through.
That's a great point, because when you think about the cost of going to an event, whether it's a conference or a mastermind or whatever, if you pay the VIP price, does that generate a disproportionately large return? That's a very different sort of question than does the event pay for itself? So I've found that going VIP to an event has led to some really big accounts that I would not have met because we met in the VIP lounge or we met in the first few rows of the event, and if I was sitting further back in the general admission section, I probably wouldn't have met that person. Yeah, these are key distinctions.
Yeah, and one thing too as well that I was just going to note too, especially for coaches when you're considering like where you want to play, how you want to win in this game we call business, then how long is it oftentimes taking clients to say yes to working with you as well? So oftentimes you're getting people into your CRM, they're landing on your calendar. How long from that first point of contact until they book an appointment with you, or how long from that first point of contact until they become a client. Because some of the interesting data coming through right now, a couple of years ago, it might have been, maybe a 2-month window where people were learning about you and actually on average becoming clients. But what we've seen, I don't know if you've seen this as well, but in the last 2 years or so, it's really extended that window. So it's longer to, 4 to 6 months, oftentimes in the coaching space, for people to really build that trust factor with you, into becoming clients. And what could be really interesting to also track is that window the same for, your social media traffic versus, conferences, or those sort of things are going to really fast track what's happening there too.
Good stuff. So now let's move on to the software and the libraries of templates that you like the most, and why, and which ones you might suggest our listener pass on.
Yes. So first of all, I did want to address software is getting savvy to the fact that people are wanting more visualization of their data. So you see this on Instagram Insights. You see this on YouTube analytics on the back end, where they're creating data visualization. QuickBooks even is coming up with trying to have a dashboard on the front end of their software. So software is getting savvy to the fact that, hey, people want this. But they're also not dashboard companies. They are specific tools to help you do your accounting, or specific tools to help you increase engagement. So while that's nice, it's often not always exactly what you want. And it also doesn't necessarily talk to each other. So it might be really important for you to know how your email campaign is landing revenue on from HubSpot to QuickBooks, but they're not talking to each other. So with dashboards, one of the key benefits is that you get to layer that data, or you get to bring it in from all of the different software that you're using. You're not isolated. You're not having to hop into 12 different applications on Monday morning to figure out what the heck is going on in your business. So one of the reasons I love dashboards is that, hey, at a glance, we can see the 10, 12, 15 metrics that are important for, hey, how's the business doing today? Do I need to jump in, or can I just let our systems and processes do their thing? So that's a key distinction between the built-in dashboards of software these days, and a dashboard software that's meant to layer in all of that information. And there's what's cool is, like, there's a lot of options out there. A free one is Looker Studio, formerly Google Data Studio. It's free. Is a little bit challenging in the user interface. I think it's something that they're still working on. It's not super intuitive, and it can require a decent amount of zaps. So using Zapier to integrate to software that's not pre-built. So Google Data Studio does a really good job with things like YouTube, which they're connected with, part of the parent company, with Google Analytics. They even do a really good job with Pinterest. So some of those are pre-built and really robust. But pulling in like Facebook ads and your CRM and QuickBooks is not as enjoyable to put together. And then, there's new things like DataBox coming out. You've got Hyros, a little bit more on the expensive side for bringing data together. Very robust. And then where we've landed for small business, currently we're using Clipfolio. So it's spelled with a K, KLIP, Clipfolio. And we found that that's kind of the sweet spot for, the multi-6, multi-7 figure businesses out there, because it's cost effective, and it also integrates directly with a lot of the online software used today. So if you're using Asana and HubSpot and, Facebook ads and QuickBooks and LinkedIn and YouTube, like all of these things have pre-built, so that's very easy to pull this information into one place. And so that's the key tool that we're using these days, and just continue as what's great too is that they've been around for a long time, and we're part of their back end, you know, partner team. So as things are coming out or we're requesting new things, we've got a really great partnership with them too.
Awesome. And do they have template libraries? It seems like I'm just looking at their site that they have a gallery of dashboards. You know, do you have to start from scratch, or can you just get one of those pre-made templates to start you off?
Yes. So I know I mentioned at the beginning, like at the end of the day, I truly believe custom dashboards are going to serve you better than a full on like template for your whole business. So one of the great things Clipfolio does, they do have a segment called Power Metrics. And this basically has pre-built based on platform. So let's say you wanted to hook up Google Analytics. You could say, "Hey, I want to integrate Google Analytics with my dashboard," and then it will pre-populate all of the point and click options that you might want to import. So maybe you want to see traffic by month, or you want to see, sources of traffic, or people coming from social media or email or organic. Or maybe you want to see goal completion. You can basically point and click which ones you want to add, and it will automatically add those for you. Same thing with QuickBooks. Maybe you've got P&L data that you want to have front and center. So that power metric piece of their software makes it really easy to bring in pre-built metrics as well. And then there's fairly easy to also edit from there. So maybe that's a really good starting point, but you wanted to add one or two things, then you've got a really great spot to do that.
Got it. Now there are some big, more enterprise level tools out there like Tableau and so forth. What would be a typical kind of business intelligence dashboard software that a big enterprise might be using?
Yes. So, and that's where I came from too. Like I said, I spent a decade in corporate manufacturing and supply chain. So we were using software like Tableau or even Power BI or Domo. This is typically not for the CEO. This is for a team member to do deep dive regular analysis. So while it does bubble up some key metrics, it's typically meant to be a very robust drill down feature so that your team can analyze what's going on, kind of get into the weeds of things. Versus kind of the dashboards that we were talking about is more of an executive summary. And honestly, to prevent drill downs from happening, because oftentimes, I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but those meetings can go off on tangents if too much information is brought to the table. So those tools like Tableau, and like I said, they are more enterprise based. So this is for people that are also utilizing the Microsoft suite. Perhaps in their businesses, those features will tie on nicely with those Tableau and Power BI.
Yep. Speaking of Microsoft, there's I think a lesser known tool from them that is completely free called Microsoft Clarity. Are you familiar with this tool?
I am not.
So it's for user testing and user experience analysis. You can see anonymized session recordings showing user behavior on your site. Where are they getting stuck? Where are the what are called rage clicks, where they're clicking on something that's not actually supposed to be clicked on and doesn't take them anywhere. And so you can see this information, and it's free, like Google Analytics is free, and you can add that as an overlay and not have to stop using Google Analytics. You just use Microsoft Clarity on top of that, and then that could give you some actionable insights fed into whatever dashboard software you're using to give you insights into what to do next to improve the user experience.
Very cool. I'll have to look into that one.
I know we're about out of time here, so if we could give our listener or viewer some actionable next step, they don't have to necessarily book a strategy call with you or whatever, but if they could maybe get some sort of free download, free tool, some video to watch, something that would help them to move this forward if they're interested in actually getting some really great dashboards in their business.
Yes, absolutely. I would highly suggest grabbing our 12 metrics checklist. You can grab that over at 12metrics.com. So 12metrics.com. And what that's going to do is going to not only give you a checklist, but I'm also going to have these mini videos that go with each of those 12 metrics as well. So, metric number one, video number one, so that you can really understand why this is important, how you could actually use it and implement it. And really get at least a handful of metrics started that are most likely to help you in making this year one of your best yet.
Awesome. And then to work with you, where do they go for that?
Yes. So if you are interested in just having a white glove service to get this dashboard up and running, we would love to talk to you on our boutique dashboard building services. You can check us out over at theprojectbooth.com. And we've got some great info over there and a place to book a call with us if that sounds like a next best step for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Layne. This was fabulous. And you do great work. We know each other through one of the masterminds that we're both in, JVMM, Joint Venture Mastermind. And this is an interview I've wanted to have us do for at least a few months. So thank you for coming.
Yes, always a pleasure chatting with you, Stephan. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And then thank you, listener. Go out there, make it a great week, do something amazing. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.